guys, welcome back to my channel. It's just Jame, and I'm just here trying to change your perspective. I don't need to change your mind. I just want you to think about things a little differently than maybe you did before you clicked on my face, okay? So today I want to talk about why I quit my ER job. So I worked there for, I guess, 2 months, and the first thing that really came up was actually, like, the day that I started my very first shift. I was pretty sure that I was pregnant. I had not taken a test yet, but I was pretty sure that I was. And then by my second shift, I knew that I was. I took a test, and then you just become very acutely aware of all the radiation. I actually came out of several rooms, and they were doing, like, they were doing x-rays next door. And you know when you can hear people through the walls that the radiation protection is probably not that great. I kind of let that go for a while, but it was definitely like something, it was like the first thing that I was like, is this really where I need to be? And then of course after becoming pregnant, Ryan really had an issue with the psych patients and you obviously get criminals, you get people from the jail or people on their way to jail, and he wasn't very comfortable with that. So the second reason is because it was a very unhealthy environment that I was not prepared for, especially when I became pregnant, because then it's like that much harder to try to eat healthy because you just don't want to eat anything at all. There was just always like, and don't get me wrong, I'm thankful that people, cater food and bring food in, and there was always nurses who would bring in, biscuits and donuts, and I mean it was really like every single day there was some sort of food there tempting me, and I consider myself to be like a recovering alcoholic when it comes to food. That sounds kind of extreme, but I really have a hard time with self-control, and I've acknowledged that about myself, and it's something that I work on every single day. And so I really had a hard time with that. There was a drawer full of candy that was just right there by the computer desks that anybody could just reach in anytime. And for me, anyways, I have a hard time working if I eat badly. I can't concentrate, I can't focus, I feel like my stamina just isn't there. And so that was a problem to me. I don't feel like I'm a good nurse when I'm full of junk food. And I personally have the opinion that as nurses we should be the example. I feel like as nurses we should be sort of the beacon of health, and I think, to be honest, I think that that's part of the problem with healthcare now, is that we can't fix it because we're part of the problem. A lot of nurses have really, really unhealthy eating habits, unhealthy coping mechanisms that include eating badly, and I just think that really sort of perpetuates the problem. There was a girl that was a patient at the ER who had foot pain, and she was a fairly young girl. I mean, she wasn't my patient, so I don't know. I just overheard this conversation and I saw her in the hallway. But she looked to be like in her 20s, and she was morbidly obese. And one of the nurses made the comment, well, she just wants to get back to her Cheetos, meaning like, let's just discharge her and let her go. And the nurse practitioner, and I said, somebody needs to tell her that those Cheetos are what's giving her that foot pain. You'd be amazed at the number of people who don't realize that their weight is causing their physical pains. Our bodies were not designed to hold up that much extra support. It's just asking too much, especially when you're already malnourished, and then your bones are going to be weaker and nothing's working like it's supposed to be. And so I said, somebody needs to tell her the Cheetos are what's making her feet hurt. And the nurse practitioner who was discharging her said, oh, I don't do that. I never tell people that. Mind you, that obesity is like rampant in America right now, and it really is something that needs to be addressed. I think that if anybody's going to say something, it should be our doctors. So another thing that happened, we were bought out by another company. So initially there was really no talk of a mandate, and then when we were bought out, then I was initially told it would be February before it was required, and I'm due in March, so I was like, well, that's not terrible. I can just I'll hold out until then, and then, we'll just see, if I'm even still liking it or whatever. And then that mandate got pushed up to either like the end of September or the beginning of October, something like that. On top of the fact that they were bribing people They were bribing staff with $400 each if you got the shot. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's okay to bribe people and give them money for. You can't even pay somebody to vote a certain way. Why are we paying people to take a medical treatment? That doesn't sit well with me. And one of the most frustrating parts was I had several nurses tell me that they wouldn't have got it if they hadn't felt pressured to get it. They felt like if this was inevitable, they felt like it was going to have to happen. Several of them were single moms, and they were the only breadwinner for the family, and so they basically felt like they didn't have a choice and that anywhere that they worked as a nurse was going to require it, and so they might as well just do it. And that, y'all, that broke my heart. I really hoped that, and I've said from the beginning that if nurses would just stand up and acknowledge the reality of this, and just that try to put people's minds at ease and try to take away some of the fear that this could be ratcheted down several notches very quickly. And I've really been discouraged and disappointed by just in my personal profession with other nurses that are just so willing to just lay down and take it. And I understand their reason behind it. I just wish that they hadn't felt like they were backed into a corner over it. So along these same lines, I think it was within a month of me working there, I got called into the HR office for a TikTok that I made. And all it said was, I didn't mention where I worked, I didn't mention any patient specifics, I just said that there was a patient that was brought into the ER within a week of getting her shot. And according to her husband, she was completely active, healthy, and no health issues whatsoever. And she was presenting with stroke symptoms. She was not overweight. There was no other underlying reason why she should be having a stroke. And I asked several nurses and ended up asking a doctor as well if this is not reportable. Are we not supposed to be reporting this? It's been within a week. That seems reportable to me. All the nurses said we weren't reporting yet, or if we were, they didn't know how to. The doctor told me that while we can report, really it's supposed to be the patient's job to report. And I didn't argue with her, but in my head I just thought, well, if the patient is stroked out upstairs in ICU, then, whose job is it going to be then? And so I put that on TikTok, and I ended it by saying, don't trust healthcare, because that's my opinion. I don't think that we're doing a stand-up job in healthcare at the moment. And so that was the part that really upset them, is that I said don't trust healthcare. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. We have the highest infant and mother mortality rates in the Western world. When you take psychiatric drugs, it causes further psychiatric problems and suicidal thoughts a lot of times. When you take heart drugs, it can cause heart problems. When you take GI drugs, it can cause GI problems. We're not making people better. The more drugs you're on in America, in general, the more prescription drugs you take, the sicker you are every single time. There's not a drug out there that's going to make you better. So I got called into the HR office for this TikTok, and they said there was really nothing they could do other than try to change my mind, change my opinion. And so we talked about it, and I was told that it was not our place to make judgments about whether something was a vaccine injury or not. Let me just break this down for y'all, okay? The whole argument with vaccines or with VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, is that it's like Yelp, meaning that anybody can comment on it. Except that I had people telling me that it was not our job as healthcare professionals to do the reporting. So do you understand how the system's a little bit rigged? Like, how can we possibly understand a brand new drug, a brand new therapy, a brand new treatment, whatever you want to call it, how can we possibly accurately record it if we're not the ones reporting it, especially in the ER? It's not our job to make judgments. It's our job to say, X happened, and then 3 days later, 4 days later, 5 days later, Y happened. It's not our job to say it was related to X. It's just our job to say this happened and then this happened. And that's not happening. It's just not. I've talked to many nurses about this. I've watched different things, different nurses trying to do this, what I'm doing right now, trying to make their own videos and trying to speak out, Instagram posts, Facebook posts, all sorts of things, and it's not getting through. People are not registering it. And then you see these memes out, like, oh, well, if all these doctors and scientists and nurses, you know, they are for it, but you're Bubba from back home who barely has a high school diploma, you know, he must be right. No, no, no. Doctors and nurses and scientists are speaking up. We just keep getting censored. That video got taken off of TikTok. I could have potentially lost my job. Somebody reported me to the board of nursing over that TikTok, even though I was just saying what happened to me, and I was just trying to shed some light on the fact that there are holes in this little plan of ours, that there are some things that are not adding up. As a nurse, I feel like that's in my job description, and I don't understand why more people aren't talking about this. One of my biggest complaints, I guess you could say, was the attitude of a lot of the staff. Not towards me. By and large, everybody was nice to me. Everybody was respectful. And they're mostly respectful to the patients as well. But the attitude about the virus, the fear that they had, it was like as soon as COVID cases started going up even just a little bit, you saw people triple masking and the whole 9 yards. You don't have to agree with this. It's my humble opinion that if you're a doctor or a nurse and you're afraid of a virus, certainly a virus with a 99% survival rate, you're in the wrong field. You shouldn't be a nurse. You shouldn't be a doctor. I realize that not everybody's going to agree with that, but I just don't think that fear has any place in the ER or in a hospital. Fear is debilitating. It is bad for our health. It increases our stress level, which weakens our immune system. And if, as the people who are supposed to be leading the charge here, if we're supposed to be the defenders, the protectors, the ones on the front lines, we have no business being afraid. That's like a cop saying he's afraid of a criminal. Then don't be a cop. You can't have that mentality and expect a good outcome. The top 3 comorbidities that are causing the most death with COVID are diabetes, obesity, and fear and anxiety disorders. Those fear and anxiety disorders are really being used and abused. People are, you know, when you tell somebody who already has an anxiety disorder that they have COVID, they automatically think they're getting ready to die. They're headed to the ICU. And that fear just stresses them out, and it causes you to not be able to breathe even more. It just is a vicious cycle that we perpetuate, and I don't understand why more people don't see it. So ultimately, what made my decision to leave was I had a COVID patient who was treated badly, in her opinion. Obviously, I wasn't there to see what all happened. I kind of came in just after she was in the room and everything. But she told me that they basically treated her like a leper. She was really upset. She was having trouble breathing. She was in a lot of pain because she'd been coughing so much that she just was miserable. And I went in, took care of her several times. We had good conversation. There was really no issues. And when I went in to discharge her, she said, well, what did all my results say? And I said, did nobody come in and talk to you? And she said, no, nobody else has come back in. So I pulled up her chart, and I looked, and she had pneumonia. She had COVID pneumonia, which is a big deal. You know, you want to know, the thing with pneumonia is the worst thing you can do in the entire world is lay in bed. And that's a whole other thing, because what do we do when you get COVID in the hospital? You lay in a bed, and you're not allowed to leave the room, and that's really, really bad for you. That is one of the worst things you can do, especially if you have pneumonia, is to just sit in one spot. So we went over, I probably spent 15 minutes talking to her about things that she could do to prevent any further harm. I mean, she was already having the shortness of breath and all these different issues, and she had a fever and all these different things. So she got upset and about her care there, about the fact that nobody had, like, if I had not pulled up her chart, she wouldn't have known she had pneumonia. Her discharge papers were like the standard COVID discharge papers. I don't even think it said anything in there about pneumonia. Maybe I'm wrong, but the point is, nobody talked to her about it. And so she was really upset about that. And she made a Facebook video about it. And in her Facebook video, she called out the hospital that I worked at. She called out the doctor that was taking care of her. And then she called out me and talked about how great I was as a nurse. and some of the things that I told her, which then got me landed back in the HR office, because one of the things that I told her was that, and I tell everybody this, if somebody comes at you with a ventilator, you run the other direction. If you can't run the other direction, then maybe you need a ventilator. We can talk about it at that point. But if you can at all say, I don't want that ventilator, you probably don't need one. Ventilators are for people who literally cannot breathe on their own anymore. So I was brought into the HR office, and they questioned me about that, wanted to make sure that that was true, that I said that. They informed me that I was not allowed to say that because she could, if there was, quote, an adverse event because of my advice that she took, she could sue me, she could sue the hospital. And I laughed, and I said, the irony is you guys are trying to make me take a medical treatment that if something happens to me, there's no liability. Not the doctor who told me to get it, not this hospital who's mandating that I get it, not the nurse who gave it, not the manufacturers. There's zero liability. And I said, I stand by what I said to her. I said, we've known since early spring of 2020 that ventilators are associated with an 80% death rate. They're not an appropriate treatment for COVID, and I'm more than happy to pull up the documents to prove that. I said, I have plenty of ventilator experience. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking out of my butt here. And my manager interrupted me, and she said, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I need to say, ventilators are great. She said, look at Christopher Reeves. Look how long he lived on a ventilator. And I did not say anything at the time because, there are some things that are just not worth the battle. But y'all, the difference between Christopher Reeves and these COVID patients is night and day. I've taken care of my own Christopher Reeves type patient who had to be on a ventilator because of an accident. They're very different. When you can breathe on your own and you're having that ability taken away from you versus when you physically can't. And it's not just the ventilator. It's you've taken away their advocate. You're not allowed to have somebody in there with you. You're given all sorts of drugs that are causing all sorts of damage. Remdesivir alone, we know, causes organ failure. I'm pretty sure specifically kidney failure. When you are sedating people, when you are giving them paralytics, you are taking away their ability to breathe. And our bodies are kind of lazy. I don't know if you know that, but we like to choose the path of least resistance. So if you take that away, and they're like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore, cool, I'm not going to. Especially if they've already been weakened by an extended stay in the hospital, by poor food quality, by a lack of relationship, because God forbid anybody go in a COVID room and you can't understand them. They got 3 masks on, they've got a face shield on. Those patients are isolated. They're the definition of isolated. You take away their community, their ability to talk to somebody, and then you give them all these different drugs, and then you're surprised when they don't fare well. I don't understand how as nurses we don't see the pattern that we're making here. Yeah, there's a place for ventilators, by all means. By all means. I have many, many patients who are on ventilators, and I don't see any issue with them being on ventilators. But as far as these COVID patients, if they can breathe on their own, I think they should be able to, and they should be allowed to. There are so many people who have been told that they were going to end up on a ventilator because of COVID and refused it and ended up walking out of the hospital days later. You can't just... It's not a one-size-fits-all treatment, and it shouldn't be treated that way. Not to mention that you have ventilator-associated pneumonia, which has been a huge deal. It's always been like the #1 killer of ventilator patients. So you already have this big risk. Why would you... And they initially said that they were using ventilators last year because they didn't want to use BiPAPs and CPAPs to prevent the aerosol in the air and things like that. But regardless, there are more than enough doctors who have come out and said these are a bad idea. So anyway, I was told that I couldn't say that I couldn't tell somebody that, and so I sat in the HR office and I really had to contemplate what I was going to do, because this was the second time I've been told that I can't speak up, I can't say things that I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes, my own experiences. I feel like as a nurse, it is my job to educate people. It is my job. I feel like I'm being paid for my professional abilities, my professional opinion on situations. In the ER, that's the point, right? For me to, you're paying me to handle a situation, to be my own agent in a lot of ways. They really expect you to be able to educate, to be able to manage the majority of a patient by yourself. So if you're not going to respect my professional opinion, then why am I working there? When I have the studies to back it up. And I understand where they're coming from. As a hospital, I understand the legality behind it, but from a nursing standpoint, nurse to nurse, I think that if we don't speak up, then this is only going to get worse. So thankfully, prior to this meeting, Rand and I had talked, and we both agreed that this was really not a healthy environment. Certainly now that I was pregnant, we already had the miscarriage, and I actually had several issues with this pregnancy in the very beginning where we weren't sure, we thought that we lost it several times, basically. And so we just agreed that it was not safe, it wasn't a good idea. And so I just went ahead and said, well, then I guess this isn't where I need to work then, if you guys are not going to allow me to have my own opinion on things and be able to educate my patients in the way that I see fit. So I went straight back to my pediatric home health job. I really didn't miss a beat. I went straight to the office and told them I was ready to work, and I had already been there. And honestly, the whole time I was at the ER, all I did was talk about my sweet little babies anyway, so it worked out. And I feel so much better. I had literally the day that I left, I had so much energy. I just, there's some decisions that you make and you just know that they're the right ones. The funny thing is, since I've left, I've had several people contact me to tell me that there was a doctor that works there who posted on Facebook basically saying, in a nutshell, that he had no sympathy for unvaccinated patients. And there was a whole stink about it. And then more Facebook posts were made saying, if you are a patient with, if you have a family member who's under the care of this guy, then you need to have him moved, get a new doctor, go to a new hospital, whatever. And I would love to know if he ended up in the HR office, because I don't understand how you can have that mentality. And that's been a theme. I mean, I think it was maybe Texas, or there was a big story where 70 doctors walked out of a hospital to protest the unvaccinated. You don't do that with abusive victims. If a girl comes in abuse, well, you should have left him. This is your fault. You should have left him years ago. Or a drug addict, well, you knew that you weren't supposed to be doing drugs, or blah, blah, blah. The fact is that as doctors and nurses, we should be able to treat anybody anyways. If you're so afraid of getting sick, you're in the wrong field. There are loads of different treatment options for this virus. As with other things, they're not mandating broccoli, y'all. They're not mandating that you go to the gym every day, are they? So why are they so worried and so pushy about this? It doesn't make sense. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to compromise my morals and my professional integrity to bow down to something that I don't believe in and that I don't trust. And if I'm not going to work somewhere that can't respect my professional opinion on that, or my personal religious beliefs on that as well, it shouldn't have to be that I need to sign a paper or get permission. I don't need a permission slip to say that I don't want something in my body. But the point is, I decide what's good for me, not you. Not my place of employment. If I can keep myself healthy, then what's it to you? If I never call in sick, then what does it matter? Right? True health cannot be injected into you, okay? I'm here to tell you, it takes hard work. It takes hard work to be healthy. I always say, I never get sick, and people say, oh, you can't, don't say that, you're going to jinx yourself. No, I'm saying I don't get sick because I understand what it takes to get sick. I understand that it's a spectrum. Your health is a spectrum. You can feed into your health, or you can feed into sickness. There are things that make you sick, and there are things that make you healthy. And the more of each one that you do, the more closer to the other side you're going to get. So I'm going to wrap this up by just saying that if you do have COVID, I have people message me every single week that have asked me where to get certain things, what they can do for their loved one or themselves because they've tested positive or they're having symptoms. It's not been a large, crazy number, but so far none of them have gone to the hospital. So if you'd like to take my advice, you're more than welcome. If you think I'm a crackpot, crazy person, and I'm too crunchy for you, then just move on, honey, because it's okay with me. I'm going to be over here being healthy and living my best life. Now, if you get COVID, if your loved one gets COVID, what's important? What do you need to know? Number one, the two biggest things that are killing people with COVID are pneumonia and blood clots. How do you get pneumonia and blood clots? By laying in the bed. You get both of those things from being still, from sedentary lifestyles, from not expanding your lungs enough, from not... Pneumonia is fluid in your lungs, right? So if you're too tired, too fatigued, too short of breath to even get up and walk, then you can at least sit up. Even if you are in the hospital, you can sit up in your bed. You can walk around the room if you can. Take deep breaths. You can exercise your lungs. Big, deep breaths. Expand yourself. Don't sit like this and try to breathe. It's not going to happen. You've got to be up, good posture, shoulders back. Give your lungs room to expand. You know, for the first couple of days, you might not be able to get off the couch. But then by maybe day 3, you might can get up and walk to the mailbox. But you have to push yourself. Yeah, you're going to feel like junk. You're going to feel like crap. But that's part of it, okay? You're going to feel just as bad at the hospital. They're just going to dump you full of chemicals, and then you're going to feel worse. So along with taking deep breaths, you can take your vitamins. I won't go into which ones. There's all sorts of videos you can find on YouTube and articles you can find and different things about which ones are best. You can go to an IV bar even and get IV vitamin C, different immune boosting concoctions. Ask yourself while you're there why you can get an immune boosting IV serum at an IV bar like Hydrate and not in the ER or in the ICU. I'll let you think about that for yourself. One of the most important things you can do is just to catch it early. Catch it early. With anything in life, if you can catch it early, that's half the battle. You know, it's a lot easier to lose 10 pounds than it is to lose 100 pounds, right? It's no different than with COVID. There are lots and lots of things that you can do early on. Stay active, stay moving, sweat. I am a firm believer in not treating your fever if you can help it, if you can stand it. There are plenty of things. Again, that I did a video, one of my very first video that I ever did on YouTube was about what to do if you get COVID. I'll put it at the end so you can watch it if you're interested. But your fever is your body's defense mechanism. It is your way of your body fighting off infection. Most viruses and bacteria die at a higher temperature. For every 1 degree increase in temperature, your immune response doubles. So a fever is your body doing its job. Get out in the sunlight. You know, crazy things like that. I know that's wild to think about, but those things truly will help you. Getting up, staying active, staying moving, and treating it early. There are lots of, not lots, but there are a few different things that are actively being suppressed, like NAC, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, even though the NIH did just approve ivermectin for use with COVID patients, thank God. So that hopefully will become more available, because there for a while, pharmacies were refusing to fill the prescription, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think it was mostly chain pharmacies that were refusing, but you could still go to a local privately owned pharmacy, and most of them would fill it if they had it available. And on the ivermectin, let me just tell you a story, because this is going back to the ER. This was sort of the attitude that people had. And I'm sure you've seen the memes about ivermectin and how it's a horse dewormer and blah, 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 because people don't know how to read or think for themselves anymore. So this nurse, this registered nurse who worked at the ER, came up to the computer station that I was working at. There was me and another nurse, and she walks up and she says, you know, all these people don't trust the government, but yet they're willing to take horse dewormer. And I said, very respectfully, actually, ivermectin is a really great drug. It's won a Nobel Peace Prize. It's been used for 30 years. I said there was an excellent study done in Argentina. A little over 1,200 healthcare workers were studied for 3 months. A little over 800 of them were given ivermectin, 12 milligrams, once a week for 3 months. The control group was not. Out of the ivermectin group, 0 people got COVID. 0 people got COVID. And of the control group, 58% got COVID. And I said, so isn't that great? Like, that's exciting, you know, so it really is a bigger, you know, there really is a lot of potential there. Y'all, this girl did not even acknowledge that I spoke. She literally just walked away from me. Now, if you're truly so afraid of this virus, and you're truly so adamant I mean, because why else would you be pushing this vaccine so hard if it's not because you're afraid of the repercussions of the virus, right? What other reason would you have for pushing it? So now here I am telling you, hey, there's another solution. It's really well trusted. We have 30 years of experience with it. It's cheap. It's effective. It works great early on. And you, as a nurse, don't even want to acknowledge that. You're the problem. You're part of the problem. You are part of why our country is caving in on itself. I'm sorry. I really am. I don't want to be rude. I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings. But you can't have that mentality and be a nurse and work on the front lines. Like, you should be singing from the rooftops, hey, there's this great new thing out that people are using and it's working and people are having great success with it. And instead it's being mocked. I've seen so many nurses mocking this drug that it honestly turns my stomach. I mean, how much research did they possibly do before they posted those snarky little memes or they made fun of people? And yeah, people were going to the feed store to get it. Why do you think that is? Because nurses like us are not speaking out and saying, hey, doctors, why are we not using this? It's our job to protect our patients. It's our job to be advocates for our patients. When did that go away? When did we start being so judgmental and so elitist? I don't know, but that was the biggest reason why I left. Like, I could not take the attitudes of people. You know, I just felt like I could make more of a difference here behind my camera than I could talking to a couple of patients a day, you know? At what point do we not realize that something's wrong here? I love y'all. I'm not trying to piss anybody off, but I'm not going to sit back and just give in to this when there are so many other solutions, so many other things that we can be doing besides just this one thing. If y'all are truly so scared of this virus, go eat your broccoli, go take a walk, go get out in the sunshine, go take your vitamins. Those are going to help you arguably more than any injection you take. You can't inject health. Period. Okay, so that's it for me. That's why I quit my ER job. Comment below. Let me know if you've had any similar experiences. Let me know what your thoughts are. Maybe you think I'm crazy. Maybe you think I'm totally blind and you work in an ER and you have a completely different experience. Let's talk about it. There's no way to make this situation better if we don't talk about it. So, I'm just Jame. I'm just trying to change your perspective. And until next time, I'll just see you later, okay?